So we're going to get started with Adam's presentation here in just a minute. Wanted to let you know how I got involved because it has to do a little bit with Adam. I was walking with Christine about 12 years ago through the P&E Carnival. And we're just walking around. There's all these people in this big booth. They were doing one of the trade shows. And all these people have these bands on their heads, and there's flashy lights everywhere. I think this is pretty ridiculous. And I asked the guy, "So what's going on here?" And he says, "Well, we're testing people's stress, and it's reading on the computer." I thought, "Well, that's really interesting," and I was ready to walk away. And then he said one thing that made sense to me that nobody else had said. He says, "And then we're doing the therapy from the computer." I said, "What? You're actually evoking a change in these people?" I thought that was really, really different than anything I'd seen before. So I figured that's great. I gave him, you have to fill out a ballot. So I gave him my name, my email address, my phone number, and they called me. And they called me, and they called me, and they called me. It took them about 6 months to finally get me to come into an open house. So we're there. There's about 50 of us. And Adam says, "I'd like to get a volunteer to put you on this giant screen so everybody can see everything that's going on inside your body." I thought, well, they got me here. It's 6 months. I put my hand up. And I must have put my hand up 10 feet high because he picked me for some reason. I wasn't the prettiest one in the room. And if you know Adam, that counts for something. But he chose me. So I went. He put on the headband, put on the wrist straps, put on the ankle bands, and he tested me. And there I was in all my glory. And he says, "Oh, looks like you have some lower back issues." I thought, "Yeah, so does half of Canada." Big whoop. And he says, "Looks like you did something to your big toe." I said, "That's weird, because when I was running one day, I broke the big knuckle on my toe. And nobody could have known that." And then he comes up to me and quietly whispers in my ear, "Dude, you got to go see a dentist." I said, "What?" Perfect teeth, no problem whatsoever. So I left it at that. 3 days later, my wisdom tooth abscesses, and I've got to go and have it removed. I'm thinking, this stupid little machine knew it before I knew it. So I got kind of excited, as you would, having to go to a dentist and have a tooth removed. And I bought a device. And I went to Victoria and I got my training. Meanwhile, I book an appointment to have my tooth pulled out. And I'm working, getting all my training done, doing therapy on myself and all that kind of stuff. And then I go back to the dentist and he says to me, "You've got the most amazing recuperative abilities I've ever seen." I thought, wow, my skill is pretty cool. So that's our story. Please welcome to the stage, Adam Mandel.
Yay, thank you very much, honey. Hi. Louder, come on, let's get the energy going. Thank you, better. I need your help with this one. I don't know if you know or you don't know, but I've been in bed for the last 2.5 days, 3 days, pretty knocked out coming into this lecture. In the last 2 months, I've been reconciling multiple time zones and flew in from working with my teacher in Thailand before I came into this lecture. So it was a 15-hour time difference flying from Thailand here after a month in Europe and getting onto that time zone. So it's been a lot on my body. Plus, who knew that a lecture on transformation was going to throw my entire world into the washing machine in the spin cycle and create a further fracture of self. So between feeling kind of like a bag of, you can add in said word, wow, look at that. For all those who know me and love me, I opted to not swear in that moment. Amazing, right? Transformation, see? Uh, but between not feeling my best and also not having the same state of self-awareness and power that I proposed this lecture a month ago in, I'm not sure where we're going on this one, to be honest. This may be the first time in a lecture I fall flat on my face. I'm okay with that if you are. But here's transformation. Let's explore it as a topic together, and recognize. So yeah, let's get into it. Before I do, though, I really want to say a couple things. First of all, I want to say thank you to a lady who's sitting front and center, just second row in, off to the left. Not to single anybody out, but Norma Hope is just somebody I love dearly. And when I saw her 2 or 3 days ago, she came up and she said, look, I drove up to see you. And we haven't seen each other for like a really long time. Probably 5 or 6 years now since the last time. And just like all of you, with certain people, you just have that heart resonance, right? And time, distance, space, it can all go by. And yet in that moment when you first lay eyes on each other, it's an instant connection, an instant resonance, a coherence, a soul family. And, Norma was the first person at the conference to resonate that. And then I got hit with the next one. Where is she, Deanna? Deanna Stanley, there you are. And then Deanna Stanley, and another person I had no idea that she was going to be here, but somebody that I care about deeply and that we have deep history through this work together, that coming together, meeting each other through the classes that I've given, and the interactions and relationships built. Magical things have happened with Deanna. It's really such an affirmation, and has been such an affirmation for me over the years, to keep going as an educator and a lecturer in this business, watching her success and knowing that I was a part of the success that she's created for herself. It was a huge motivator to continue on in this field, and to be up here doing this. Throughout a career of about 17 years, and probably 700 or 800 times that I've held a mic, stood in front of people, and taught a class. It's relationships like Norma and Deanna, and all of the relationships in this room, which fuel me and have kept me going through it. And so on top of just those two, I'd like to say thank you, to really all of you. Whether directly connected or indirectly connected, we're part of a greater whole. And it's really easy, in my experience, to forget how special the work that we do through this device is. It becomes our daily norm, right? And even to the point where, I don't know about you, but I often won't tell people what I do for a living. And I don't tell people because I don't want to engage the conversation. There's no way to tell somebody, oh, I work with a device that stimulates you to 11,000 frequencies of fungus, virus, mold, bacteria, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, hormones, amino acids, and measures your stress response. So you know how when you go see the doctor and you have migraines and he says, here, take this pill, suppressing that symptom? Well, we don't do that. Inevitably, when you offer that out at any table, anywhere, the rest of the evening is dominated by the nature of your conversation. It doesn't, really? We can do that now? And how often do we forget how special the lens that we view the world through with this technology, how special that lens is? I know for myself, I often forget. Excuse me. Yet, working through a tool such as this, we're really working through focused consciousness incarnate. A lot of things have changed in regards to both my perception of myself, my perception of what this tool is, and maybe that's why transformation is such an appropriate topic for today. And for another year until we see each other again. So let's explore it together. Just again, a thank you to all of you, and let's raise the energy in the room. A huge round of applause for everybody and the beautiful work that you do. Okay, you are the healer. It's an interesting theme, especially to find myself following Kim's lecture and some of the places that she was going with it. You are the healer. What does it mean? I can tell you this year for me, it's meant I'm going through a massive process of healing. Healing wounds I didn't know I had, things coming up and awarenesses and fractures, like fractures of identity, false identity and self that I didn't really expect. It started this year. Well, actually, it's very ironic. Some weird things happening at this conference thus far. Without going into details, I'll say this. One of the catalysts 4 years ago, my ego was fractured. I knew something was coming. I intuited it. My astrologer told me, hey man, you're a caterpillar right now. You're going to go through a process of chrysalis. It's really a 6-year process in total. And out of it, you're going to become the butterfly. But it's not going to be pretty. And anticipating that change was coming, I thought, okay, I'm smarter than the universe. Clearly, so much for that one. And I'll impose the change before it can come there to bite me in the ass. I feel what's coming. I know what's coming, and I'm a pretty powerful person. And as such, regardless of the natural forces, astral trajectories, the purpose of my soul's incarnation, fuck that, excuse my language. I'm going to impose my will on the template. And, in my experience, very rarely does that work out well for me. But I still like to try. So, 4 years ago, this process began, this process of fracture. But, there were many things that I discovered about myself, like in that. I intuited, first of all, that the change was coming. I jumped into a different career, started promoting something different, relevant, but different. And it turned out that vehicle, the jump over to a different bifurcation in the road, turned out to be exactly what took me down. So even though I thought I'm so much smarter, boom. I made a right turn as opposed to a left, but it was the right turn that ended up nailing me. I think the left turn would have nailed me too. I think the point was that I needed to fracture and I needed that to happen. And so in that, wow. Coming into this year and into this lecture, I didn't really know or want to be up here. I've done a lot of this, and I wasn't feeling passionate about it. And so transformation as a theme, I thought, well, if I'm not feeling passionate about the device right now, what I can feel passionate about is myself. And if I stand and I talk about what changes I'm going through, then I can be in my authenticity, and how that applies to the device. We'll look at those things, and through that I can, from my heart, give a lecture that's true to myself. And I thought, okay, transformation, it's what I'm in the process of going through. Told to me by my astrologer. I've gone through 3 years of shit thus, and some amazing stuff has happened. So maybe now is the time to give this lecture. And I went into Budapest a month ago, and I gave the greatest lecture. Like, it was so good. This year's been difficult. My stepdad, whom I had a really difficult time with in my life, my stepdad ended up going into septic shock. And if you've not seen septic shock before, wow. Like, you see somebody go from on their feet and standing to their kidneys and their livers completely shut down, and they're intubated in 2 or 3 days while delirium has set in, etc. And amazingly, as I fought for his life and advocated going through the hospital experience in a way that I'd never imagined, amazing, coming out the other side of it, and I had this intuitive knowing things would never be the same. Now, that relationship with my stepdad, was one of the most difficult of my life. We fought when I was a kid for my mother's attention. We physically fought. He was one of the origins of my deepest core root traumas. And as such, I was very proud as my life had continued and we had healed that relationship, become really close friends. We built shacks and sheds on my property. We had adoration for each other. like deep adoration. Through jealousy, through negative emotion, we'd really evolved the relationship. And so I was really proud of it. And yet it was surprising and profound to go through the experience of saving his life, to come out the other side where he now is still alive, but I don't have a relationship with him. Like, it's our relationship somehow through that experience ended. And that was really, really difficult, but it further was a part of the chrysalis that I was in process of going through. And so I explored, okay, transformation. What does that look like coming into this lecture? And I thought to myself, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to quit smoking. That's a good thing, right? I'm going to ultimately begin a process of change by, rather than being in my hypocrisy with the work that I do, because the directions that I'm going require me to be in a higher state of integrity and authenticity in regards to the topics I'm speaking of. I'll quit smoking, I'll quit porn, and I'll really start to examine what's going on under here. What are the personal transformations that I need to look at? What's going on with this ego? Like, this huge construct of this ego that I've created as a byproduct of betrayal, abandonment, territorial conflict, that play as core issues through the projection of my life. How do I deal with those? So something special happened last year, and it happened right at around this time at this conference. I was trying to understand how to fix some of the problems at the time, which we've since fixed, that existed in the CLASP software. And there was one name that kept coming up for me in regards to how to do that. A gentleman's name that I'd heard about 20 years before, and it had come up twice. And so it occurred to me, maybe the right thing to do here is to see if I can reach out to this man. And I jumped on Facebook, and my God, in 10 minutes, there he was. I sent a message as to whether or not he'd be open to a phone call. He was. And I ended up on the phone for 4.5 hours. You know when that happens, like when you were like a kid and you were on the telephone with your boyfriend for like 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours at a time. This was important, but the resonance was there. Like, you're feeling it. Something magical in that moment is happening. Well, man, I felt that. I had this profound conversation with a man whom embodied everything that I've been looking for from a teacher. And the conversation quickly moved away from the software, and which was a conversation that he didn't want to have, could have, but didn't want to. And the conversation just went higher. And it turns out that he's a 30-year, 40-year Vajrayana Buddhist whom has studied specifically for 25 years under a Lama in the school of Dzogchen Buddhism. And he wouldn't describe himself as a Buddhist. And we can talk about naked women, and we can also talk about high spiritual concepts. So for me, the fact that we can go throughout the whole chakra system rather than be only in the projection of heart, throat, and crown, or third eye and crown, enabled me the ability to have found my teacher. Like, anybody here ever read The Way of the Peaceful Warrior? Great book, Dan Millman. I remember when I first read that book, my experience to that book was, excuse my language again, sometimes it just has to come out. My experience was, like, why does this man get a teacher, get the ability to manifest his teacher in life, and why don't I? Where's my teacher? And wow, I felt as though after 4.5 hours on the phone with this man, I had found my teacher. The next day I thought, should I contact him? And then I thought, no, don't contact him. It's like a girl. You meet a girl at the bar the night before, contact her the next day, and you're needy, right? You're not getting the girl. Maybe wait a day or two. Allow for a little bit of romance, And sure enough, so I waited 2 days. It was October 15th of last year, and I just sent a message saying, look, I really enjoyed that conversation. It was very special to me. And the response that I got, and it had been told to me by my astrologer that my butterfly would be visible for the first time on October 15th. His response to me saying, I really enjoyed the conversation, was to send me that picture. Like, who sends a person a picture of a butterfly and a frog? Why the hell would you do that? How does it make any sense? And he does this shit to me all the time now with these pictures, depending on the mood that I'm in. And it's like, most often I get the baboon, which is actually a term of endearment for him because he raised Gibbon's apes. Like we're talking that Into the Mist kind of thing. What was her name? The lady in Africa that worked with the gorillas? Jane Goodall. He's like the male version. I'm not kidding you. Anytime we go anywhere, like primates are all about him. The dogs start peeing all over the floor and get excited. It's him. Birds land on his shoulder and they start eating out of his food, like on the table. The first time I ate with him at a restaurant way up in the rainforests in Thailand, there was a cockatiel sharing my cashew chicken with me and standing in my cashew chicken. And I'm sitting here going, like, is this sanitary? And meanwhile, this thing's eating my cashew chicken. And I'm like, well, you know what? He seems to really know something, so I'm just going to go with this. And I didn't die from any avian weird flus, and I shared a lovely bowl of cashew chicken with a very nice cockatiel. I've been very blessed to manifest this, and the conversation that we've been having since I met him is a conversation in transformation. And so hence, this is the reason why I wanted to take a look at this topic and see how we could apply it. Because I think there's everybody in this room that would like to manifest more or something different or some form of dream in self and or that has been blocked. How do we allow ourselves to become the next us? How do we do that when we don't know what that looks like? Like, one of the scariest things that I've been experiencing as of late, as I go through a process of fracture and I own my behaviors, I own my ego projection and where those things come from. How do I fracture myself, allow those things to go, and in that lose identity when I don't know what comes out the other side? And this is actually why transformation, there are 4 methods of change. The one we're going to focus on today is transformation, rather than renunciation or self-liberation or even purging or purification. Transformation is our vehicle, our vessel today, and it's actually in change as change is approached. Really, all 4 of those methods are part of a whole. But if we look at transformation, what is it? That's what we're going to explore today, and we're going to explore how do we evoke it as a process with the device. So, first, let's understand, what is it that we're looking at when we look at transformation? Here's what shows up as the stages of transformation. Stage 1, we experience relief or shock, denial or disbelief. And you'll notice over here, we're on the fear side of what holds us back from change and transformations in our life. So stage 1, an event has happened. There's been a catalyst. And through that event, we experience relief, shock, denial, disbelief. As we move into stage 2, we move into anger, bargaining, guilt and remorse, panic or self-doubt, sadness or depression. And again, we're still on the fear side of the coin, the fear side of the process. We move into stage 3, where we start moving towards acceptance, letting go of the old, letting go of the false. So I thought I knew, for example, who I was a month ago when I gave this lecture. Turns out I didn't know shit. But that's okay too. For me, the first 3 stages of transformation are a point of, as Kim's lecture went into, a point of avoidance. So between smoking 40 cigarettes a day, smoking an ounce of weed a month, watching as much porn as I possibly can without going raw, I was avoiding all of these points of pain through the use of addictive behaviors. And I think many of us can identify the different forms of addiction that we use as means of avoidance for numbing, and the repression of self and the allowance for the repression of self, especially to a room full of women. And as a man, kind of very ashamed for a lot of my behavior as a man. I would say this, I can't speak to the men that you've all been with, but a lot of my behavior up until this point has been pretty fucking vile. Like, not in all aspects or respects to life, but certainly in respects to relationships and the people whereby dirty laundry comes out and we allow ourselves to be that which necessarily we aren't. And as I look at that and examine that, what I look at and decide is, man, I really don't want to be that anymore. Like, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to go through life demeaning, demoralizing. I want to build people. That's what feels good. It's easy in life to be the cynic. It's easy to placate to the negative. The idealist, however, is the nature of my heart. The true nature of my heart. And I can go through an airport and criticize the guy that's acting like an asshole, or I can feel compassion for the fact that he too is traveling that day, surrounded by a whole bunch of people, uncomfortable, not necessarily happy with the flow of his day. Maybe the plane's late, maybe the kids are screaming, who knows? But the point is, it's easy to approach the world in contempt and to resonate back the contempt, less easy to approach it in empathy. And I often find I like to move into my self-importance, but in truth, at the end of the day, it's all interconnection. And so again, what do you choose to want to be? So moving out of the fear side of the table, we start moving into where change happens. And in stage 4, we start experimenting with our new freedom, this new reality. We start searching for meaning as we move into stage 5. And in stage 6, now we've integrated a new beginning. There is a shift in our paradigm. We are born again and brand new. So really, what is the first thing that needs to happen? Death. And it's scary. Like, it's scary to own behavior. It's scary to own behavior and false self and allow those false perceptions to die. To understand that those ego constructs served a purpose, those purpose being self-preservation and protection. But just like the swelling in your knee when you injure yourself, the protection can become part of the problem. And I know certainly, a man of 43 years old, exploring myself, exploring what I want out of the next 43 years of my life. Probably 86 is all the money I'm expecting, unless we come into some really profound technologies. I'm pretty good at 86 if I get to go that far, right? How do we get there? How do I allow myself to shift into the new me, into the new paradigm? The first thing I have to do is die. It all begins and ends with death. And we think it's a negative. When I hear the word death, I think it's a negative. But in fact, in order to be reborn, I have to die. And I never understood the Mexican culture and how they, particularly the Mexican culture, and how they celebrate death. Celebrate death, and they mourn it horribly too, but that's a whole other conversation. But the celebration of death is a profound, beautiful piece in the Mexican culture, and I think it's because they recognize the power. Like, it is a profound power, and the reality is we're all dying every day. Like, the me that I thought I was yesterday is not the me that I am today. I can hold on to those ideas of yesterday, but the reality is my skin cells that are now the dust on the countertop, they had to die for the new ones to be reborn. And if they didn't, I'd be looking mighty gray and nasty in this moment, right? It's happening around us every day, all the time. We can't afford it, we can't avoid it. So then the question is, What part of you are you going to allow to die today, and for what purpose? Death is inevitable and life is pain. But is pain bad? What is the counterbalance to pain? Sorry? Who said pleasure? That's right. The counterbalance to pain is pleasure. So the question is, could you know pleasure without pain? Not in this incarnation. You're in the school of duality. So the school of duality, this world, teaches us through the comparative, through the contrast. We couldn't know pleasure and the pleasure of life, the true pleasure of our lives, without the beautiful pain of our life. The question is the suffering. I mean, pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. Now, there's some times where you need to suffer. How many of you are mothers? Put your hands up. That's pretty much the whole room. How many of you remember watching your children take a crap in their diapers, and you'd go to change them, but your kid wasn't ready to get out of his poop? Right? How many of you can identify the same behavior as an adult? Right? As an adult, where you're swimming in the shit of your life, and you could make a change, you could implement the things that you know how to do, but rather than do that, you want to swim in your shit a little bit. Does anybody identify that behavior? I think probably all of us, right? I know I certainly can. But I know that I'm sick of sitting in my shit. And it's time to evolve it, and it's time to change my diaper. And if anybody has any of that Zincofax cream, I don't want a rash. So a lifetime then, recognizing that it's happening daily, hourly, by the second, by the week, by the month, by the year, by the season. It's happening all around us all the time. It's the one constant is change. And so how do we flow with that change? How do we evoke it and support those changes in our lives such that we begin a process of manifesting in ways that we want to? Now, my teacher would say to me, one of the biggest misconceptions in life is that you're supposed to get what you want. You know, Walt Disney has told us a lie, let's say, in that idea that we're all supposed to get what we want. Everybody in the room is going to have $1 million, a Lamborghini, and blowjobs for everyone, or the female counterpart of that. It's a misconception. But if I can support myself in better understanding my need, and through that need, understanding what it is that properly fulfills, not at an ego level, but at a deep core sense of self. Defining what it is that I want is a very important foundation. In order for limitless potential to arise, what has to die? What are you prepared to let die in your behavior in order to allow the new you to be born? I know that it hit a place for me where I'm ready for everything to die in order to allow it to be reborn. And what does that look like, and what does that mean? I'm still trying to define that. You know, a month ago, I thought I really knew. A month ago, I thought, okay, I'm going to sort of say to the world, this is what I want. And the world be damned if you stand in the way of my want. I'm going to superimpose my need or my want over your need. I felt pretty convicted a month ago in that. Today I'm feeling as though that's a pretty selfish perspective and a pretty selfish behavior. Where that balances out, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting concept when you think about the fact that, you know, Many people, in my experience, don't even get to the point of allowing themselves to understand what it is that they want. Like when I ask a client, what do you want? How often is a client fluidly able to answer that question, defined? If I asked you, what do you want? You've got 20 years left, 40 years left, 60 years left. What do you want out of those 60 years? How many people can define it? Like really, how many of you have thought about what do I want this week, this month, this year? And how many of us have focused on that rather than allowing ourselves to run on an autopilot in life and or focusing on, well, I know I don't want this. In my experience, the majority, I know certainly myself I can identify, in my experience, the majority exist in I don't want this. But then when you try to even shift into I do want this, how does one do that in a healthy way? I have yet to find the answer, but I do believe that we can use consciousness tools such as these that can support us towards finding those answers. So myself, I'm in a deep exploration where a month ago I thought, well, I can define easily what I want. What I'm discovering is this process of chrysalis and liquefaction in moving towards a butterfly. It even what you think you want as the false self dies. It's not as simple as I want the beach. In Dzogchen Buddhism, and this is something I don't know that many people understand, what are the potentials available to us humans in a lifetime in transformation? So again, I've been exploring this topic with a man whom has 30 years studying through a lama in Tibetan Buddhism that's not shared with foreigners. He was very, very fortunate to have the mountaintop experience, and as such, I'm very fortunate to have found him. So in that, he's shared with me things that I never knew of. Can you see the outline in the picture on the right? Yeah, so what this is a projection into the rainbow body, something described in Dzogchen Buddhism as a potential for human transformation. These guys literally project themselves into light at the end. So when you watch Star Wars and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader have that epic battle where Vader nails him with the lightsaber and he just disappears, that comes from a principle, a premise in Dzogchen Buddhism, which is similar to the story of Enoch, the ability to transform ourselves into our light body. Now, what would be the purpose of that? Somebody asked me in my last lecture. The purpose of that, from their perspective, is to be able to continue working in service of the school of duality, because they see that they're needed here and a part of the template. What's amazing when you look at this is that that's the same man. This is a monk that achieved his rainbow transformation. And it's described in Dzogchen Buddhism that when they do it, depending on how much of themselves that they are able to project into their rainbow bodies, dictates how big their physical body stays after they leave. They literally shrink. That's him in an ice cooler afterwards. The smallest one in record fit into a cigar box. Now, why do I show you this? Am I saying, all right, what we all want to do in the room here is project ourselves into our rainbow bodies? That's what we're going for? Clearly not. Clearly not. But it's the potential. And the point of this is to recognize that there is nothing in our lives that we can't transform. If these guys can go from literally being 5'10" into being, what is that, 1.5 2 feet in physical size, if they can transform themselves that profoundly, then can we not transform our relationships in our life? Can we not transform the manifestations and the karmas that we attract, the stories that we learn? Can we not transform the repetitious patterns? Does anybody in the room play out repetitious patterns in their life? Anybody? No, none of you ever? Amazing. You're all just in a state of perfect perpetual growth. That's killer. Please teach me. So all of the stuff, all of the soup of everything occurring in the universe exists within us in every moment. So how do we evoke those changes? How do we bring that in and apply it as a concept? You know, over the years, there were protocols that had been brought forth through biofeedback where people were talking a lot about the money magnet or the attraction or the laws of attraction, etc. Well, I kind of feel like the law of attraction is a little bit of bullshit, but I think the flow of attraction is something much different. The law of attraction is not, in my opinion, correct, but the flow of attraction is. So I think the first thing as we move towards looking at transformation and evoking it, I think what we have to look at is, are you willing to walk your path? When is the time? What must die for those potentials to be reborn? I know that my narcissistic love affair with myself is something that needs to die to allow a truer understanding of myself to be born. And I choose to allow that. I choose to be vulnerable. I choose to experience the pain. I choose to not run from the pain anymore. And I choose to observe it. And it's like the first time in my life where I'm sort of stepping to the side rather than waging my bet in change. And I'm recognizing I don't know what's coming out the other side. I see my bleeding. I see my pain. And maybe it's okay. Like maybe it's okay not to know. Maybe it's okay to feel the pain. Well, that's okay. Should I repeat it? Siri didn't quite catch that. So apparently I need to reiterate. That was actually pretty perfect. So I'm willing to walk the path. I think it's time for change. And when I look out there, what I see is that, you know what, so many people are hitting this precipice at this point. So I don't think it's just me that's going through this process. I'm looking out and I'm seeing it happening kind of everywhere. And I'm really blessed and grateful to be able to share this, my experience, and hopefully encourage, inspire you to take honest view of self, recognize how you've maybe been repressed, allowed yourself demeaned and demoralized, shut down and not able to actually play out your highest potential, and to make that choice. I don't know what's tomorrow. I know what I have is now. And in the now, I choose to want to be authentic in my truth, in my heart, and resonating in love, working to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. It's really easy in my experience to be part of the problem. There's a whole bunch of assholes, myself included, in the world, and it's really easy to be that. Then I look at people, for example, like Bala. You know, the man emulates and resonates pure love. May not be the most charismatic person like in the room, like but like the experience of being around the man is like, whoa. You know, every year, as long as I've known him, he flies into Budapest for 2 weeks to work on orphan children in Hungary before the conferences. Like, what a beautiful soul. I know my friend Cessna rocks around Mexico working to do the same with a lot of people misfortunate in her country, and I've seen her do it over the years. Like, there are so many people that approach life with beautiful heart and in a contribution, a healthy contribution to the matrix. I think I'd like to do more of that. That's one thing that I look at as I approach the potential of change. I know that I'd like to be a better husband, a better father, a better friend. You know, I know that those are things that seem worthy to me as means of sacrifice. And I think maybe that's my direction right now. Not entirely sure. So, complex adaptive systems, what does that mean? We are complex adaptive systems. What does it mean to you in respect to transformation as a topic? It means we can go through life adding a whole lot of stress, adding a whole lot of toxicity, and still managing to get through. As a complex adaptive system, my body is designed to get a stone in my shoe and to adapt to that stone in my shoe and to keep walking. And eventually, maybe I compensate for it. The stone moves or I get it moved out. But as a result, I've started a compensation, and I go through life in multiple forms of compensation for all the emotional. And, I really lately have been focusing more on the emotional side of conflict and trauma in an experience in life, because I believe, in fact, everything that we experience is all emotion. I really don't have a lot of faith in physicality at this point, and I no longer believe humans to be nouns. Wait a minute. I no longer believe humans to be nouns. What does that mean? A noun. Yeah, I am. What's a noun? Like, I'm starting to recognize all the axioms that we apply in life in our own perception, and I'm questioning those axioms. I'm questioning words that we use as a default where we think we know what we're talking about, but what actually are we talking about? Like healing. What is healing? It's an axiom. What is a noun? A noun is a person, right? Is it though? I kind of think we're verbs. Right? We're action. We're not static. I don't really believe I'm a noun. I think I'm a verb. I think I'm in action. I think I'm in motion constantly. And I think you are too, because what is reality? What is this place? I mean, it's very, very possible that we're all one person, schizophrenically expressing ourselves in multiple lifetimes for the purpose of our own growth. So the axiom of the fact that I think I know what's actually going on in this room is a very schizophrenic notion in duality. So, as a complex adaptive system, what does it mean in respect to evoking change in our lives? What do we need? Well, fundamentally, we need to change behaviors in order to change bad adaptations, different areas of resistance. But more importantly, what we need is energy. Energy is what allows a complex adaptive system its ability to transform, its ability to evolve, its ability to grow. Everything requires energy. So as we approach protocol towards transformation, energy is going to be our starting point. How do we increase the energy? Because without energy, we don't have the opportunity to evoke chance, choice, and change. The first thing we need is the energy to create the chance, the opportunity for change. Chance, choice, and then change. It all begins with energy. So how do we increase our energy? How do we understand the energy of the body? Well, essentially, you have two bank accounts. You have your adaptive reserve, which is like your savings account, and you have your adaptive potential, that's your checking account. So if you have no funds in the account, do you have the capacity to support transformation and change? No, obviously not. So the first thing that we need to evoke change is energy. Now, energy has many different names, whatever that is. Energy has many different names. But what we're going to focus on is Jing and Qi. Shen too, but Shen is more a byproduct of the healthy mental, which also still plays a huge role. But what we're going to do is understand that energy in the human experience for 5,000 years or better has been aptly well described through the likes of Chinese medicine as Jing and Qi. So Jing would be very similar to our adaptive reserve. Jing is your savings account. It's what you're born with, the energy that you come through with, your Jing Qi. Your Qi is the chi that you make on a daily basis. So when your body is healthy and you're flowing, you're making more chi. There are ways of building both accounts, but the chi is a much easier place to build. Now, many people, especially in Chinese medicine, if you have a background, many people believe that Jing is actually not a chi which can be replenished. It was sort of a classic understanding in Chinese medicine that your Jing, which I think is similar if we take a 5,000-year-old term and we apply it today, or a Taoism, 5,000 years, so it's about that. If we take that term, we apply it today, I think Jing could be aptly sort of described as DNA. So your DNA is your DNA, and generally you're not going to change your DNA throughout a lifetime other than to toxify and corrupt it. But usually you're not going to create more DNA, more energy, those that come through that are constitutionally challenged. These are people that have Jing Qi deficiencies. They come here to be that. However, I don't believe that Chinese doctors had consciousness tools available to them whereby they could have direct conversations with the body. And that's where I believe the tool that we have enables a far greater potential than a lot of limitations which have been put on us, put in mindsets of schools of healing for thousands of years. I think the tool that we work with and the tools moving into the future that we continue to work with have the capacity to actually challenge those ideas. I think we can increase the Jing Qi. But also it's very important to ensure that our operating chi, the general day-to-day chi, is replenished and that we're healthy and that we're living a life of healthy, good habits. So we want to focus on increasing our chi. So in the program, there is no place to work on the dantians. The dantians are what is understood in Chinese medicine, again, as the three qis. The lower would be your Jing Qi in your primal base, okay? In the middle, you have your Qi, and at the top, you have your Shen. Now, what is a dantian? It's the major fundamental center of energy. And then from there, we have chakras, which, so I would look at the dantians as like the three oceans. The dantians as the Great Lakes, and the meridians as all the rivers that connect all of the waterways. And in my experience, it's very similar to the world that we live within, right? We are essentially it. It is us. So where in the program can we access the dantians? Does anybody know? You're actually right, Lori. I love you for always cluing in intuitive ways. Yeah, it's actually mislabeled. In the scalar panel, does everybody know the scalar panel? You'll notice in the scalar panel in the universal therapy, and this is written out for you in protocol, so you don't have to freak yourselves out with the writing. But in the scalar panel, there's a lower and a middle and an upper chakra release. But there are three of them proposed, and in fact what they aren't is chakras, because there aren't three chakras. What they actually are is the dantians. This is the ability to access dantian and work from the Shen through from the Jing through the Qi through the Shen. So I've applied a different consciousness to the scalar panel, and what I recognize is the ability to apply those is profound. Deanna Stanley has been for the last 6 years now, 7 years with running the 10. Is it about 6 years now? So it's 10 years now. Okay, so for the last 10 years, Deanna has run her practice, her business, based on work that I did, which was really foundation to the system, which was saying, come away from all disease. We don't need to be in disease and disease mitigation. In fact, it's not our business to do that. What we do need to do is be in support of the body, doing what the body is designed to do, which is to heal itself. And so what does that actually mean? How do we enable the body to do what it's designed to do and to heal itself when it's not? Well, back to this presentation, we have to increase the energy. How do we increase the energy? We remove the blockages to the flow of that energy. And so there's a 10-session protocol that I wrote, which you can contact my people at admin@quantumclarity.net, admin@quantumclarity.net, and they're happy to give you Adam's 10-session protocol. In that 10-session protocol, session number 1, Deanna's built her entire business around it. And was it last year or the year before that I got the message saying, last year, for the first time, I'm tracking to make $100,000 this year? And yeah, I mean, and the changes and the things that you've seen in your practice, amazing. And what? I don't want to hear about any MLMs. Oh yeah, I thought she was. I thought she was trying to sell me something, and I was being particularly a dick that day. So my bad. But like, if I remember correctly, without tooting my own horn, prior to that work, you weren't really ever able to really make a real go at business with the device, right? Hit or miss, and you didn't feel good about it. Yeah. And so that work, it didn't make sense. And that work enabled and supported Deanna into a foundation. From that foundation, she built off of it. How many people live in your town? 5,000. So 5,000 people in her town, and so many people like to say, oh, I'm from a small town. There's no way I could build a successful business in my small town. For years, I have heard the same complaints come out of very similar people saying all the reasons why they've not been able to be successful in practice, and yet here's a woman in a town of 5,000 running a business solely on the premise of detox, and profoundly successful, more than she's ever been in her life. Well, the beauty of it is that Deanna runs these sessions, these 10 sessions all the time. So I'll ask one more question. Deanna, which session do your clients notice the most, I don't want to say benefit, but that they feel the most charged up and best from? Really? The third? I always found it was session 1 for me. Like in session 1, just doing the scalar panel as their focus. Often it was like taking off that 200-pound bag of shit, excuse my language, that they'd been carrying with them their whole life. But session 3 is also cool because it's the revisitation of the further energy work, whereby you would have done again their chakras and opened up their meridian pathways as to the nature of that work. So again, back to getting that flow, that essential flow happening in energy, whereby the body has the capacity to change. What is fundamental for the body to change, be it in a process of transformation or a process of healing, which also is a process of transformation, the common denominator to all of it is the increase of energy. Where there is energy, there is the potential for change. Without the energy, there is no potential for change. And so again, that's why we approach this specifically from change. So again, this should not be called the lower or the middle or the upper chakra. These should be called the dantians. This should be called your Jing, your Qi, and your Shen, as far as the release goes. So this is a huge part of the work that I do when looking towards a process of transformation. Now, the next thing that we're going to focus on unlocking as we work to increase the energy of the body is working through the governing and the conception vessels, the Ren Mai and the Du Mai. These are the channels of foundation, of fundamental energy flow. Now, I do warn you, because since having taught this, I've got a lot of feedback from the last conference, which we just gave in Europe. This is not a process, or these sessions are not processes to be done in the evening, because this really will unlock energy in a profound way that you've likely never seen happen when applied like this. And so as such, people often don't sleep if you do this in an evening. So this is like a morning, early afternoon style session and work to be doing. Don't attempt this at night. So working on the governing vessel and the conception vessel are ways of unlocking this energy that we need. Now also we want to work with some adaptogenic herbs. And why adaptogenics? Adaptogenic herbs are wonderful because how many of you have a background in Chinese medicine? Like an extensive background in herbal Chinese medicine. Exactly, one or two of us, which means the rest of us don't understand the premise of these herbs, how to apply them, and hence, if you work to adaptogenic herbs, the nice thing about them is they will upregulate or downregulate based on the need of the body. And the herb does that on its own. So I highly recommend Dragon Herbs because they're an amazing company available to you. The people at Dragon Herbs are super, super high quality. In fact, my teacher is one of the owners of the company. If you call into them, they will put you on the phone with really well-educated doctors of Chinese medicine who will work with you towards getting the proper herbs that you need. But I find adaptogenics are really the way to go. So highly recommend adaptogenics. Stuff like ginseng or ashwagandha. That. Good stuff. All right, now we get into the mental cerebral. What signals are you sending out? They equal the signals you're receiving. Do you focus on what you want, or are you ruled by fear? Let's see. Cessna, what do you want? You want to heal. Okay. You want to help, and through helping heal. Kathy Bliss, other than going to the bathroom, what do you want? To keep connecting people. Okay. Donna Woodworth, what do you want? You want to hold your new grandbaby. Was it a brand new one? Like today? Oh, 4 months old, and yet you're still in that place? Oh, he's 3 pounds. Oh, wow, so he was a little premature. Cool. And now, how is he? That's huge. Have you been working on him? Nice. Nice. What do you want? Are you sending the right signal out? Is what you want defined? You know, have you been responsible with what you want? You remember that old, be careful what you wish for? It's actually a thing. Yeah, it's totally a thing. Who knew? Right? It's a thing. Be conscious of what you're pulsing out. So for me, a month ago, where I had myself focused was summer. I want perpetual summer. I want to wear board shorts and t-shirts and flip-flops. I want to surf every day. That's where I feel good, when I'm next to the water and next to the ocean. The difficulty in my life, I'm a Pisces, so it's probably fairly apt that I feel and want to live in the ocean, right? Makes sense. It's where I feel healthy, healing. When I'm by it, my body starts to go through a process of healing, sometimes not necessarily entirely comfortable, but I also lose 30 or 40 pounds. I get myself into great physical shape. I want to be in physical shape because I need to be in the water. That's how I feel. Problem? I got involved with a Taurus. She loves the prairies. She's a bull. As such, the ocean or the prairies, they're pretty contradictory fundamentally, right? So, you know, it was pretty easy for me to state my want and say, I want the ocean. I want the life that I can have. And, you know, I'm really blessed in the sense that I don't draw an income from where I live. So there's nothing that keeps me there other than the Taurus, and believe me, the cow, and not referring to my partner as a cow, I'm just referring to her astral sign right now, to be very clear. but the cow roots itself in when it's being told to do something that it doesn't want to do. Like, imagine trying to be like, well, let's go here, and the tourist doesn't want to move. Like, that's a thing also, right? So you combine the Taurus and the fundamental with then two children, and suddenly I want the beach at the expense of everybody else is actually kind of a shitty statement. Like, regardless of the fact that I want it, regardless of the fact that I theoretically could have it, there are other variables as to what I want and how what I want has effect on people. Certainly a month ago, I hadn't really thought about it. I just hit that precipice point like a child saying, but I want it. And then, God bless my teacher, having spent a month with him, what he kept reflecting, because he'll never say anything directly to me about a circumstance or a situation in life, but he'll continue to repeat a mantra if I'm not necessarily getting it. And what he kept repeating on my last trip with him was, who's to say that you're here to get what you want? Now, I struggle with that because, for example, I like to create in the world. I'm in the process of creating something really, really magical, both in my lectures and in my life. And through those creations, I think to myself, well, then what's the purpose of creation? Like, if I'm not supposed to go for getting the things that I want, then what's the point of doing anything? And what I realize is what I want has to also be in line with other factors and other variables. For example, duty. There was an amazing story once told to me, and I'll share the story really quickly. I was in Mexico, and I was hanging with a guy named Alejandro. And Alejandro decided in the 70s that he was sick of his life. What he wanted was to move to India. And in India, he wanted to become a Swami. He wanted to become a guru. So he went to an ashram out in India, and he positioned himself to become a Swami. And a lot of things happened which were crazy and out of character to sort of turn his experience around. But it turned out that he didn't find what he was looking for at the ashram and had to leave the ashram, which was inauthentic, to find an authentic experience. And so as such, he ended up living with the groundskeeper, whom was the only Indian person at the ashram, full of Western gurus. And he ended up living in the man's shack with his family, and he was taken to that man's very modest temple on Shiva's birthday. And on Shiva's birthday, it's said that if you do your mantra really, really well and really disciplined, that you'll meet Shiva. So my friend Alejandro was really excited. He's going to meet Shiva. He's going to meet a living deity. It's pretty exciting, right? So, he went there, he's doing his mantra really, really hard, really focused, really disciplined. And then ding, 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 it's over. He didn't meet Shiva. He's feeling pretty low at this point, thinking, did he not do it right? What happened, etc. So now he's leaving the temple, and there's what looks to be an old beggar, a man that doesn't have any money, outside the ashram. And he's talking to the man, and they're having casual conversation. The man invites him down to the Ganges, which I guess was a 5-minute walk from where the temple was. And they get down to the river, and Alejandro, thinking, I've got no money and nothing better to do, why not? I'll go down. They're having a lovely casual conversation, and then the man turns to him and he says, my friend, why did you come to India? And Alejandro says, oh, I came here to be a Swami or a guru. And the man starts laughing. And laughing and laughing, and Alejandro's getting red and angry and like, what the heck? Why are you laughing at me? And the man says to him, my friend, if you were meant to be a Swami or a guru, you would have been born in India. You were not born in India, you were born in Mexico. You need to be at home with your people. And Alejandro said, I don't want to be with my people. I don't want to live there. I've burned all my bridges back home. I have come here to be a Swami or a guru. And the man just starts laughing again. And he says, that's the problem with you Westerners. You're always looking out. You're never looking in. Well, this makes Alejandro really pissed because, as far as he's concerned, he's meeting with a beggar, right? And the beggar says now, oh, and Alejandro says, who the hell are you? Who the hell are you to laugh at me and to tell me what I can or cannot be? And the man says, my friend, very calmly, you asked to see me. And Alejandro's like, what? What do you mean? He said, you were just in there praying and you were asking to see me. Here I am. Now Alejandro doesn't know what the hell to say, right? Doesn't know what to say at all. So the man says, give me your hand. So Alejandro gives the man his hand. He starts reading his hand and he says to him, oh, I see you are the oldest son of your mother. And Alejandro says, yes, that's true. And he says, you need to go home and be with your mother. And Alejandro turns around to the man and he says, I hate my mother. We don't get along. I severed that relationship. I'm never going back. He said, my friend, again, problem with your Westerners is that you don't understand before self comes duty. Before self comes duty. And that is something that's very lost in our culture in the West, a sense of duty, when you consider divorce rates of 60, 70% out there, right? A sense of duty to our higher selves, duty to the people we contract with, duty. It's very easy to shift out of situations. It's very hard to actually opt to stay in them if they're healthy and for the right reasons. So duty, that's what he was told. Well, at this point, the man says, Alejandro, you have to go back home. And Alejandro says, I just got here. But he's listening now because there's something profound that's happening with this man. He can't put his finger on it, but it's very possible that he may be speaking with Shiva. And if he's actually speaking with Shiva, it's probably a good idea that he listens, right? So he shifts his demeanor at this point. The resistance is gone. Now he's allowing for the potential of what's happening here. And he says to him, I don't want to go home. I just got to India. I haven't seen anything. And the man says, you must go home, but you can stay for 6 months. During that 6 months, what I want you to do is visit every one of my sacred sites, all of my temples. And at the end of 6 months, you need to go home, and you have to be home no later than September 2nd. Gives him the date. So Alejandro, the guy then leaves. He walks away. Alejandro doesn't know what to think as to what the hell just happened, but he knows that something's happened. So he decides, you know what? I'm going to listen. That was a profound experience. It upset me. It annoyed me. It got all the reaction. I'm supposed to listen to this. He goes traveling. So he gets home. He's home on September 2nd. Nothing exciting happens. He's there on September 2nd. Nothing amazing happens. The next morning is September 3rd, because that generally comes after September 2nd. And ring, 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 ring. Phone's ringing. Nobody's picking up. Everybody's out of the house. And he's jet lagging. He's annoyed. He gets out of bed and he goes and answers the phone. Sure enough, it's the bank calling to give them 24 hours eviction notice on the house. Now, Alejandro has no idea what the hell's going on because when he left 9 months before, the house was paid for. The mortgage was paid. His dad had died, paid off everything with the life insurance. There was no reason for the bank to be calling, but the bank is calling and saying you're going to be evicted. So it turned out that the brother-in-law, the daughter's husband, had purchased a house in Tulum or something and not made any payments on it in 11 months. And as such, the other house was collateral for the loan. The bank was foreclosing. They had sent all their notices. Alejandro's like, well, isn't there something we can do? The bank says no. So he gets his clothes on. He's half out of it. He goes down to the bank. He speaks with the loan officer. He's sitting at the table with the loan officer. Loan officer says to him, I'm sorry. We've given your mother all the notice we could. She knew this was coming. There's nothing we can do. This is just what's happening. Alejandro, defeated, gets up and goes to leave, and from the back of the room, he hears his name, Alejandro! And he looks, and there's a guy in the glass office, and he says to the guy in front of him, he's like, who's that? And the guy says, I don't know, but that's my boss. You better go. Right? So now he's even more freaked out, like the guy even knows his name, what's going on. He walks into the office, and the man looks at him, and he says warmly, Alejandro, don't you remember me? He says, no. He says, my name is Fernando. I lived on the street corner. Your parents, we used to come over to your house all the time when we didn't have food in our fridge. And your parents would always give us Christmas presents because my parents never had money. Your parents always took care of us. Why are you here today, Alejandro? Alejandro says, well, because the bank is foreclosing. He's like, our bank? Yes. Your mother? Yes. No. Now, had Alejandro not listened that day, been home on September 2nd, and been able to be woken up by the phone on September 3rd, would he have saved his mother's house? When this story was told to me, it was told to me in the mother's house with her in a wheelchair next to him, and that being one of the most beautiful relationships of his lifetime. So who did he meet on the shore of the Ganges? And what was the message? And why was that message given and shared with me? Why has that message since been given and shared with you? So defining what we want isn't necessarily as easy as what we think. Because I think one of the huge mantras in that is that anything that I choose has to do no harm. I choose to not want to do harm in the world. So therefore, the things that I want must be in line with that, is something I'm coming to realize for myself. So life is a movie. Choose your own ending. Keep believing and keep pretending. One of my favorite quotes in life from Jim Henson, The Muppets, right? That's the end of the song. Life is a movie. Choose your own ending. Keep believing, keep pretending. We've done what we came here to do. For the lovers, the dreamers, and you. Right? Jim Henson, man. The Muppets, talk about the best shit ever, right? So a belief is only a thought you continue to think, and when your beliefs match your desires, then your desires must become reality. So maybe at some point I get the beach. Maybe I get my flip-flops. Maybe I get my board shorts and my surfboard, and now that I quit smoking, I don't have to be so afraid of getting plunged under the water. I'm pretty excited to try out my new lungs. 2 months, no smoking. The liberation, my biggest fear was to actually do this a month ago in Europe and not have the cigarette as a crutch to rely on before and after the show. And then I realized, holy shit, I got through that. And then it was going to an airport and thinking, how do I get on the plane without first going for a cigarette? And then I realized, holy shit, those cigarettes actually never really helped anything. They were always established as, I better do this before that. That'll help me deal with that. But in retrospect, it didn't do anything or help me deal with anything. And talk about a liberation. I had all the chops down to justify my smoking and to justify my behavior, right down to the fact that I smoked only organic cigarettes. Right? 40 of them a day. And, be it my shamans that I would find in my lifetime, or be it spiritual teachers, like my teacher presently, the last time I left his house, not this last, but the time before, subtly, again, because he's the master of the picture, he just sent me a picture of my ashtray, completely jammed full of cigarette butts. That's all he needed to say, right? He didn't have to put his opinion or anything. He just had to reflect exactly, via his picture, what it was. The man can say one word to me and shut me down. Wow, So what I've come to realize is to say I want something isn't enough. To say I want something in respect to the variables of my life, that's more responsible. And the reason why it's so important to be defined is because you're a radio tower and you're broadcasting all the time. Now, especially as you move into a process like described in this lecture, where we're going to support our client in an increase in the energy of their body by charging the dantians, by charging and opening up the meridian systems, the fundamental pathways to energy's flow, the signals that they're broadcasting are going to be that much stronger. So again, before you start increasing said energy and enabling those signals to be stronger, we want to ensure that they're going to be in the manifestation of a well-defined transformation that they want. So defining what your transformation is, but putting a lot of focus and thought into how those changes have effect on the people around us is very, very important. Something I neglected a month ago to see. Then comes in the question of worth. Because as a narcissist, self-titled, I believe I'm worthy of everything I want. My life has been kind of that, if you think about it. How many of you have never met me or heard any part of my story before? Put your hands up. This is your first time meeting me. Do you know anything about my background? Nothing? Okay. So here's the quick abbreviated version. Like you, I bought the crazy box. Okay? I did so while living in China with a wife that was pregnant. We had no money. We had nothing. And this is back in 2004. Okay? We're living in China. We get pregnant. We have no money. We're not going to have a baby in China. That's just bad. If you've ever seen a Chinese hospital, you would understand. And we decide to buy the crazy box. But in China, we can't see what the crazy box looks like because on the internet, there's internet filters. So we can't actually access what the crazy box is or have any concept of looking at it. But we know because somebody did, her aunt, who I had never met, did a session on me from Saskatchewan to China, picked up on my neck being frozen, the fact that it wouldn't work, and I'd seen everybody, nobody could make my neck move. She picked up on my neck not moving, she picked up on the cause, which was MSG toxicity, go figure, I'm living in China, having shut down my gallbladder meridian, worked on it the next day, I could move completely. So I said, honey, I don't know what the hell that is, but we need to be a part of it. So we flew directly from China into our course in Victoria. We're handed the little plastic box, and we're like, oh shit. We've been suckered. Because in my mind, working from Canada to China, man, the thing was huge. It had stuff moving around and satellites, and they handed me the little plastic box, and I was just like, oh, God, we've been fucked. And then day one in the class, the lady sitting next to me said, did you know that Professor Nelson, the amazing inventor, likes to wear women's clothing? And I was like, oh, my God. I've been screwed, and I've been screwed by a transvestite. And then after that, the person next to us, or the teacher at the time, because the education was not yet well developed, the teacher at the time proceeded to get up and teach us all that the world was actually populated and run by a secret race of reptilian aliens, but it's okay because this device can take care of that. So now I've been screwed by a transvestite, and I've joined a cult. And this is the most advanced medical system in the world. We're going to confirm its accuracy with a rock and a string. Let's see if the test today is accurate. It's a good test. It's accurate. Okay. That was my introduction to this consciousness tool. As such, I began my own investigation of attempting to understand that which I saw, because honestly, I had no other choice. We were 8 months pregnant, about to have a baby, and I had to support the family. So From there, Peter had offered that he met me at a trade show. Within the first 6 months of running a business, very quickly, I went to the grocery store in a town of 1,000 people with predominantly Mennonite and Hutterites, people that wear bonnets. Clearly not the most open to energy medicine crew that you're going to come across, right? The Bible Belt in Canada, and this is where I'm starting my practice. And yet going into the grocery store, I thought to myself, who does stress reduction apply to? Kind of everybody. And if I can connect in a place where everybody goes in a small town, well, maybe, who knows? Well, I made enough money for us to move into the city. A couple months in practice, I got an article written about us for 6 months. We got really busy in practice. Then I met the guy who ran Western Canada. I joined that team, and we started a company called the Quantum Knights. For 4 years, we were the most successful team to educate, market, and support others in getting involved in this. We sold... I think about 2,000 devices in 4 years, about $40 million worth of skios. And traveled all over the world. We then started a deal with China, and the deal with China was for 20,000 systems and exclusive distribution for the device in China. Myself and Jeff Sutton actually went and worked on the Chinese national team during the Beijing Olympics. And then I lived in China for another 4 years after that, promoting and putting the device in the hospitals, and that work still continues. So we presently have skio devices going into hospitals every month in China, and that's a byproduct of the work that I did. And after that, I worked for the Crown Prince of Dubai as his personal therapist. So, story after story, it's been a really extraordinary experience and an extraordinary career. So as I said, as a narcissist, I sort of feel as though I can just really impose my ability on and my belief on the template. And what I'm discovering is it's actually not the right way to do it. And maybe I'm not supposed to be the narcissist that I think I am. And maybe I'm not that narcissist, but in regards to the worthiness of it all, am I worthy of the changes that I want? And how much of my own judgment of myself cuts me off from the ability to believe in my worth? I don't have struggle with that worth issue in that same way, but other people do in their process of defining what they want. That's why I said here, kill the judge. Because whatever your special brand of freak is, whatever you love, regardless of how logical your love for that is, you're equally entitled to your love, to your passion, to your fire, and to your flame. So that judge, that little voice that pipes up and says, no, you're not worthy of that, just close your mouth. Granted, if you can't sing worth a shit, don't become a professional singer. You're probably not necessarily, but it doesn't mean don't sing. Just don't necessarily try to look for a career in music. If you can sing, maybe that's your goal and maybe that's what you need to pursue. But the point is, kill the judge or anything that tells you that you are not worthy of that which you want. I'm worthy of my dream of the beach. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I just know that I am, but I'm not going to do so at the expense of others. That's something I've come to learn. In our process of evoking transformation, so let's take a backtrack here. What have we done? We've opened up the channels to energy. We've got the energy flowing. We're focused on what it is that we want to broadcast, because now that energy's flowing, our broadcasting signal is much more profound. So what's the next part of the application of information-based systems like ours and how to make them apply best? Command manifestation. What is command manifestation? It is the use of language. First of all, the use of language that our clients, that ourselves, that we use in our internal monologue and our conversation with others, becoming aware of that. But as a practitioner, using language appropriately through the device where we're not saying things like, try to be better, I will try to quit smoking. For example, in my pack of cigarettes, one of the things done by the Brilliance Tobacco Company is perfect reinforcement language of disempowering me. And what it says is, in one of my packs of cigarettes, is never quit trying to quit smoking. Never quit trying to quit smoking. So do they want me to quit smoking? No. But they got it in there, didn't they? Never quit trying to quit smoking. So the language that we use, the commands that we use are really important. Now, we can consider this neuro-linguistic programming, but when we use that word, that sounds like a bunch of courses we have to take from Richard Bandler or some other schmuck. And really, what it comes down to is just being defined in what it is that you want, a further clarification in language of saying what you want. So rather than I want to try to be better, not I will be better, I am better. And how does that work when you're typing it into the system? It's a consciousness of recognizing that words have energy and power, and with the ability to help, to heal, to hinder, and to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, and to humble, considering the powerful force, bless you, considering the powerful force of the words that we utter, we must discipline ourselves to speak in ways that convey respect, gentleness, and humility. And it's interesting that I wrote this because I don't know that I entirely understood it when I wrote it, but some part of me must have, because there it is. And I'm sitting there going, holy shit, I wrote that. But let's look at it for a second. In the top two columns, we have disempowering language. And consider how much we use that disempowering language in our life. I can't, I won't, it's hard, I don't believe, I'm a skeptic, I don't like it. And look at all the things that it's saying in respect to that language. I can't, I will literally stop my growth. I won't, will literally put a block in your way. It's hard. Cannot is a command to self. I don't believe will literally stop you from achieving anything in your life. I'm a skeptic stops a person from learning. I don't like it stops a person from gaining intellect. Trying, I can try, I'm trying, I will try, I will attempt. It's all disempowering, and you can totally hear Yoda saying, try? There is no try. There is do or do not, right? And, man, Star Wars really got a lot of that shit right. It's crazy. But I can, I am, I believe, it is done, I can do it, I can do anything, I'm doing it. By changing the language that we approach some of the panels in the device, we really have a capacity to manifest that which we want. Understand that you're playing with a consciousness tool. So one of the points that I really want to talk about, and one of the reasons for transformation as a topic this year, is because I really came into a knowing that your device work has not been what you thought. About 3 years ago, when Mandel released their software, we did so pulling out an oscilloscope and actually measuring what the output was of the respective boxes, Skio, Indigo, etc. And what we discovered was that there was nothing wrong with the hardware in the boxes. The other software, which shall remain unnamed, but the other software, in fact, even though on the Skio, Indigo, Adductor's working panel represented scalar wave, triangle wave, square wave, Nelson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even though it said that it was doing those things, the only thing coming out of the box was a sinus wave. So even though the software depicted it was switching into all these different waveforms out of the box, the only thing coming out of the box was a sinus wave. So it was bullshit, or not bullshit, but broken. You have to hand it to the team at Mandel because they spent over 3 years fixing the software, correcting 4,000 errors to the point where out of the box now, if it says it's producing those waveforms, it actually is. And as such, those who have been using the Mandel software over the course of the last year, hooked up in the harness, are likely seeing a lot better results than they ever have before. And there's a reason for it, which is cool. And it shows me the potential and the power of the box itself. However, I got great results before. Now, going back to the 2006 version of the software, which we tested, and everybody said, oh, the 6606 and 7707 versions of the software, they were the best. Man, I tested them. They did nothing more than any of the other versions of the software. They only produced the sinus wave. So that then enabled me to think, if the cause and effect of this hasn't been something physically able to be measured, then more of this work is happening in the morphogenic field, subspace, than any other cause and effect that's happening out of this box. So if that's true, and I mean, I did crazy experiments where I'd proven this to myself, but I still didn't prove this to myself in my conversation, meaning I've been in the middle of the Dubai desert in the middle of the night, hooked up to camels with a dark field microscopist, a veterinarian, and a racing camel, and a crazy series of events and stories where we worked on the camel here, had a dark field microscope here showing the results, and as we're working on the camel hooked up, with nothing hooked up to the blood, you see in real time the motility of the blood changing. And what that shows you, everybody just got chills, I know. And I've been in the middle of the desert doing that work. So I have proven and seen evidence in my own experience of subspace working. But at the same time, I chose not to put my focus on it because marketing the system very often, that wasn't really a part of the conversation that most people were ready to hear and or to have as it applied. Much easier to have a physical or a more physical conversation with these tools and allow somebody to discover morphogenics and subspace ideas like this than to force feed a sandwich that, you know, they're not ready to eat, right? However, what I've come to understand is that the subspace function of the device is a heck of a lot more powerful than I ever would have imagined. And as such, it changes my approach to the technology and to how I go about applying it. So you must ask for what you want, combined with the belief and the conviction in the fact that you can have it. You are angels, you are angelic, and you have one major profound gift in creation, others. But let's go on the higher chakras for creation at this point, and in that you have your voice. You have vibration into a holographic matrix. So what are the commands that you're putting out, both in your direct language, but also the commands that you're using as it applies to this system? So there are some panels which have eluded us. Panels like this. How many people avoid the NLP panel in the universal therapy? Because you don't know how to go about applying the apt language. Well, what I would say is, as you go about applying apt language in this, and we'll get another opportunity in the future to do it, but define the aberrant thought. Describe the first incident, describe the last incident. This is pretty self-explanatory, but define the cure that you want. What I always felt was, I want less pain, or I want to heal. But I want to heal is a disempowering statement. I want to heal. Shouldn't it be, I am healthy? So changing the language that we approach the device with applies command. See, the whole matrix could have been actually done much better and much different than it was. For example, when it hits on broccoli, what are you supposed to do? When it hits on broccoli as one of the highest numbers in the matrix, what do you do? What do you do about that? Eat more broccoli? Is the broccoli allergic? Is it a sensitivity? Is it food that I need? Is that defined? What in bioinformational therapy enables you the ability to understand that? Commands. So if, for example, I go in and I approach the matrix, and in the matrix I type in a search, and that search is good food for healing, and I run that search against the database, then broccoli and everything that comes up as I've isolated foods, now I actually know this is what my body wants me to eat. See, commands are a huge function of the device that have been actually improperly applied to the matrix database. And so in your application, if you apply your language correctly, then you can actually work towards answering the questions that were previously unanswered. You have a generalized hit through the matrix to broccoli. What does it mean? I don't know. Now, I can attempt to investigate that and say, do you eat broccoli? No, you don't. Okay, then very likely you need it. But if I'm looking for good foods, then maybe it's better that I use the search trays against the specific libraries and define with command what it is that I want from the system, what it is that I'm asking. So if I want to know what is good food to eat for healing, good food for healing, challenge it against the foods. Do you know what I mean? Is it clear? So applying proper command when working with an information-based system is so important, and not just through the system, but in life. Here's another program where we can apply command. You know, people thought about this as like the time travel panel or sending messages. I take time travel out of it, like as a concept, because I don't, I've heard some people tell some sensational stories over the year. Personally, when I've applied the time travel panel, I never found myself in 1876, and I didn't come back with a coin that outlined the American whatever. Something happened in 1876, right? I'm Canadian. I don't know your history, really. But I know that was like a date for you guys. Oh, 1776. Yeah, see? Again, Canadian. Woohoo! I got the 76 part right. So the application of these types of panels with command, and then there's making yourself compatible with what it is that you're asking for. So previously, another protocol that I wrote that has made a lot of change in people's lives that I'd recommend you to get your hands on is called the I Am protocol. Anybody do it on themselves ever? Did it change your life? Yeah. So the I Am protocol was a protocol I designed to make you more compatible with yourself. Okay. Through that, it was initially using the compatibility program designed to work with couples, and I had the understanding of, wait, what if you're your own couple? What if you're your own partner? In order to be able to love other people, you first have to love yourself. And so it's a cool protocol which really also outlines how to give your body the physical experience of compatibility by increasing oxytocin and feelings of love before you go into fusing the bond between yourself and yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. But you could also apply commands. So rather than making yourself solely compatible with a person or yourself, here you could apply commands. So maybe what you want is money. Maybe what you want is a relationship. Maybe what you want is health, healing a degenerative condition. Working with command to support the body and understanding what you want from it has the capacity to enable the body its ability to deliver to you what you're asking for if you've increased the energy and unblocked the channels to that manifestation. So this presentation is available to all of you. The Mandel people will make it available to you, and it includes steps for a general approach to this. So feel free to ask them for it. I don't know how they're posting it, but it's all for them to do. But ultimately, what I'll leave you with is this. The time is now. The place is here. The moment is right. Welcome to the rest of your life. Make it extraordinary. Embrace your powers of transformation. Is it money? Is it love? Is it connection? All of them require that you embrace your sense of worth, your sense of self, the belief that you are worthy of the manifestations that you choose to have in your life. There is not one of you that can't manifest exactly what they want. Working with the people in this room for the last 16, 17 years, and seeing the transformations, Deanna Stanley, Norma, Woodworth, Lori, You know, the place where all of our Michigots started, Michigots, I did that for the Jews in the room, all of our craziness, the place where all of our craziness started isn't the people and the craziness that exists in the room right now. We're all evolving, we're all growing, we're all going through a process and transformation. I've given here what I think is an accessible recipe for you to evoke change, and evoke change in any respect. You know, a lot of this came from my will to help a friend in California working with autistic children, who applied a lot of what I taught last year. But this was how, one of the questions she asked me was, how do I support autistic children in enhanced speech and communication? And I thought, transformation. How do you transform? Through clarity, increase of energy, unblocking the blockages, defining what it is that you want, and allowing for that to happen. Again, this is a consciousness tool that enables you the ability to focus our intent. So define what your intent is. Define what it is that you want, and understand your possibilities are limitless. So I think that probably is all the money, and it's definitely all the energy I can muster for the balance of this. So I hope that there was some stuff in there today that was useful for you and that you can apply. And for the additional protocols that I'd outlined, like the IM protocol or the 10-session, Adam's 10 sessions, that stuff's all available. Just ask the Mandel folks for that. Where am I at, Peter? Am I done? Timing's good? I'm a couple minutes ahead. 6 minutes. So I'd say that's good. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was good. And enjoy the balance of the conference and have a great day and make your lives extraordinary. Transform to manifesting exactly what you want because you're worthy. So thank you very much.